right, everyone, welcome. For those of you that are here live or you're watching it later on the YouTube channel, welcome. And this video, or this actually conversation, because I'm going to be having it with Chris, and those of you that want to chime in, chat with us, you know, this conversation is around this new moon we're celebrating on the 25th of September, but also in Japan, it'll be the early morning on the 26th. So wherever you are, it's just around the new moon time. And I really felt like I needed to do the live call because I've missed you guys from not doing the live calls for quite some time, almost 2 months. But also this is, I would say, kind of like the midpoint, or it's not even a midpoint of the year, but the crescendo, you know, just like building up, and we're getting to the peak point of the mountains. If you want to think about hiking, that's what this new moon is. And I'm sure you are feeling a lot of what's been going on because so many planets are going retrograde right now, are in retrograde. Mercury retrograde is kind of a halfway done, slightly more. And it's just been challenging. I feel like there's a lot of being pulled apart kind of a feeling, not just right to left, front to back, but it's also heaven and earth, kind of a separate. But that separation isn't always bad because it's another way for us to stretch ourselves. That's kind of what's happening. Okay, we are stretching our capacities to hold the past and the future, but remain in the now. And that's kind of a powerful time, but I think this is when we need to come together and support one another, because I have never been here. Have you? I certainly have never been at this point in my life in Earth history. So I can only pull from the past and past knowledge. But at the same time, I know we need to begin to collect our experiences, our past lives, our karmic knowledge and information and lessons that we've learned from that, and say, okay, what do we do to collectively move forward? And some of us are leaving this earth. Some of us are choosing to leave this earth. And because it's time for them to pass the baton to the next generation, perhaps, or they just can't handle the level of intensity, the frequency changes, vibrational changes. And I was just texting my friend Helena. Many of you have listened to Helena's interviews with me too, and I have another one coming up in November, early November with her. But I texted her and said, you know, I just feel like I'm in the midst of a kind of a weird whiplash. And I've been in the automobile accident with the whiplash too, and I know what that feels like, but it's not that extreme. But spiritually, emotionally, physically, and vibrationally, I feel like I'm in this little bit of a whiplash. What I mean by that is, like, there's this forward motion that things are rolling, then I get thrown backwards. And then I find myself exerting too much energy, and then something inside me pulls me back. And so it's this readjustments that are happening, but I'm novice at it. I feel like I'm this, like a baby, maybe a 2-year-old that's learning to walk. And once she starts to walk and she knows how to move forward, because walking and running are falling forward motion, right? So you start to walk, and then the babies will start running or walking really, really fast. And all of a sudden, just like comes to a stop, loses the momentum, and then just falls back on her butt. You know, it's kind of like that. That is what's happening to many of us. And it's certainly something that I've been feeling. So that's where I wanted to get started with. And maybe, Chris, you can chime in here and then also introduce our YouTube channel, how to subscribe, and our website and all that. But I'm going to hand it back to you of what you've been feeling too.
Okay, well, I'll start with what I've been feeling, then I'll give those little notes.
Yeah.
This has been quite the intense year for me. Lots of change, lots of shakeup, lots of upset on on the personal level, it's just been a lot. And I'm sure that I'm not the only one that's been having that experience. And so many things right now are coming to a head. They are challenging us and they are asking us to take a look at our lives, take a look at what we value. And we'll get into some of this as we're talking today. But there's a real challenge in the air from my perspective, just all around us, asking us to look closely at what is most important right now. And a lot of times the answers that start to come to us aren't necessarily what we wanted or comfortable, or even in a shape that we can really recognize what they are. And that can lead us to feel very ungrounded and upended, turned over on our heads. So we need to pay attention to those kinds of dynamics also, and that it's okay. It's actually a very important part of our learning and growth process, is to be flipped over on our heads every once in a while. And I know for myself, I just left my job that I had been in back in April. And that was a time of extreme stress. And I have to say, it was almost 100% self-imposed, because I was the only one that really cared as much as I did about the change that I was going through. And I put a lot on my plate that I didn't have to. And that led to a lot more stress and even fatigue in the following weeks and months. And so that's another kind of dynamic to pay attention to, is how are you putting yourself into a certain kind of mode to handle change and stress and unknowns. And I know that for myself, I could have done it much better than I did. And I hope to say that's the last time. Maybe it's not the last time, but I want to say that's the last time that I will impose that kind of stress on myself to go through a change process, because really the stakes just weren't as high as I imagined. Okay, so we'll come back and talk about some of these things in a minute. I'm going to pop up some links in the next minute or two as we start to get going. I will put up a link to our YouTube channel. Hopefully most of you have been seeing Masami's videos that she's been putting up there over the last few weeks. I'm going to put up a link for our donation button if you'd like to support the free programming that we do. So I'll put that up there, as well as a link to the homepage where you can find programs and courses that have already been established and recorded. So we'll get all those things rolling the next couple of minutes, and I will hand it back to Masami to get us going with today's topic.
Great, thank you. And I actually pulled two cards while I was talking, and when Chris was talking, I was just shuffling, and I'll be sharing that a little later. And some of your comments I will be reading a little bit later as well. So this new moon symbolizes our need to reassess and review individual and collective patterns and beliefs. That is the main key here, okay? There's a need for that. And if you look around, we will be covering three main key things today around this new moon. And the next, maybe I would say the rest of the year, really key things, but they support this statement, our need to reassess and review individual and collective patterns and beliefs. So number one, I wanted to talk about what this day, why is it so important that we decided to go on live today, is that we are at the crossroads. Okay, we are at the crossroads, and this is individually, but also collectively. So let's start with a bigger picture, macro level. As many of you know, there's been upsurge of polarization that's going on, but also a lot of the old leaving and then the new appearing. But also we are experiencing multiple political upheavals, and people are standing up and demonstrating and saying that the no more to the old patterns, old way of controlling us. So we're all at the crossroads. So the image that came to me, and I was saying to Chris this morning, but it's like, have you ever seen those pictures of Tokyo where like Shinjuku or Shibuya area, there's this big picture that most of you have seen this. all these crosswalks coming together, and all these like sea of people coming, and they're going in very different directions, but somewhat organized fashion, right? But it's that kind of a crossroads. So many choices, so many ways you can go this way, that way. So there's an individual component to this, because you will be making your individual choices in that middle of the crossroads. But also there's this flow that's pushing you as well. So it requires all of you to use the Mercury retrograde video that I did and reassess, remember, and revisit, and basically do a lot of the reverb work right now. So if you didn't listen to the Mercury retrograde video, please do, because I go into much more details about the so RE based verbs. I wanted to talk about collectively, just briefly, what's been going on. You know, all of you know this, but the passing of the Queen, and also there's this controversial, the former Japanese Prime Minister's funeral that is scheduled to happen on the 26th. So that's tomorrow. And it's a very controversial thing, because he was Maverick, you know, he called himself the Maverick, and he was well liked internationally, but domestically, there was a lot that he did to create polarizations. He was very interested in putting a lot more money towards militarization of Japan again. And also socioeconomically, we started to see quite the difference between wealthy and the have and have-nots. And so there's been weeks really of demonstrations going on in Japan as well. And it's rare to see that much protesting going on in a very, you know, considered to be very peaceful country like Japan. So we just cannot be suppressed and oppressed much longer. That is the energy that is starting to boil up, even in island country like Japan. It's very similar to the island-minded island country of Great Britain also. So I find those two nations to reflect one another, the old passing, what's going to happen to the monarchy. King Charles is going to bring very different energy into it. I'm not sure how he's going to be accepted by the public, in what kind of a welcoming he's going to receive, but it's wait and see, because we're in the middle of the crossroads. We don't exactly know where the flow is taking us. And I think it's important that we're at the point in our history that we're not choosing, like my choosing is based on my own inner wisdom, that my goal and my future is chosen by much more connected to my inner knowing and my vertical connection between the heaven and earth, and much less of the horizontal noise. So that's something I've been talking about a lot in a lot of my interviews that you'll be hearing in November. Most of the interviews will be aired in November, but there's this idea that the horizontal noise, which comes from social media, comes from your cultural backgrounds, comes from your educational backgrounds, your language, your socioeconomic status, maybe your color of your skin, all these horizontal noise are going to be, you need to contend with them, and you have to choose to connect with the vertical line. So that's what two polarization that you're going to feel: the external horizontal pull and your vertical connection that is calling you back. And other things that many of you know about this, it's the protests in Iran over the, I hope I'm saying her name right, but Mahsa Amini's death, which is absolutely tragic, absolutely tragic. I've been following what's been going on there for a while now, since really this started up. But to see so many people go out into the streets to protest what had happened to her, as sad as it is, as just devastating as it is, gives me just a drop of hope, that hopefully that will become buckets of hope for many of us. But So it's not happening just internally. The whiplash that you've been feeling, the having a hard time recalibrating with your energetic fields, vibrational kind of connection that you thought you had, and you just feel like you're being thrown off, that's happening on the macro level as well as the micro level. And it's not to fear. It is we need to go through this shakeup. We need to go through these little bit of disequilibrium. And, I'm sure Chris will talk about this, but in educational world, the disequilibrium creates learning. Without that shakeup, feeling a little bit confused and having to recalibrate yourself, reconnect with your vertical line, that vertical axis is not always easy, and will make you feel a little bit like brain exhaustion. And that's one of the symptoms that I'm feeling. And I would like for all of you to pay attention is brain. I'm not talking brain fog, everyone. I'm not talking about brain fog. I'm talking brain exhaustion. And I've been repeating words like my brain feels like it's fried. Like my wiring, my connections, my neurons, they're just like smoking up inside there because it's overuse, maybe like recalibration is happening, and maybe old wires are being burned. Maybe that's what I'm thinking too, so that the new wires can grow. That's how I look at it. So it's not easy. Let me just put it that way. It's not easy because it's confusing, but it's confusing to our old brain. It's confusing to our old patterns. It's confusing to our reptilian part of the brain, the limbic part of the brain, the brainstem, that is always seeking for security, safety, and sameness. Oh, I just put, is that 3 S's? Is that right, Chris? Okay. So you know me with the same S's and F's and, that kind of thing. So that is what's being challenged within you also. And I will wrap up with this first point that we're in the crossroads, and I'll hand it back to Chris. But a lot of like emerging of archetypes and themes. And we're love of archetypes, right? So there's been this surge of anti-heroes that are coming up. Or so for instance, I'll give you an example of the person that assassinated the Shinzo Abe, so the Japanese former prime minister. He has brought up some dark secrets about politicians. Majority of these politicians that were connected with this religious cult that started in South Korea, that has been controlling financially, tremendously controlling the Japanese politics and the decisions. This assassinator, or is it, what's the word? Assassin. Yeah, he actually brought up this ugly, like hidden history of what the Japanese government's been doing with this group of cult, like church organization. So interesting. He still is going to be going to jail, and then for, obvious reasons, and I support that decision. But he has become kind of an weird hero, anti-hero culture is starting to happen. And I've talked about the archetypes of like the queen and switching over to king, but the king that doesn't represent the same energetic fields as the queen. So, and I know Chris is Chris loves archetypes, so I will have him chime in about this. And last thing I wanted to say about the crossroads is what can get us out of the crossroads, or maybe not out, but how to navigate that so you don't lose connection with your vertical axis, is to pause. Okay, we must pause, and the new moon period is the best time to do that. New moon is when the sky is dark, right? This is when the stillness is bubbling up from within us. And this is a great time to truly surrender to what is here that is wanting to come up. And I found it interesting that I pulled two cards, and the first one said surrender. And it says, all is well. I surrender to my inner guidance. And you can kind of see that she is going into the water naked, right? So that's one way that we can navigate this crossroads together and individually. And the second card that I pulled was perfect. I mean, I wasn't, I love when the cards will speak to us. And this is all I truly need is within me. And I'll show you the picture a little bit more, but this angel is holding to all the wisdom that is written inside her, in all of us, right? Maybe she's gifting that to us. So if we can just take a moment, maybe after I hand this over to Chris, can we do that, Chris? Like we take about maybe a 90 seconds to just pause and create deep silence within all of us, and then use Richard's words. He commented that, we can all hold hands, that his great-great-great-grandmother, I believe, great-great-grandfather, and Colwitz chief. I hope I'm saying that right. And can you read that, Chris? That I'm having a hard time.
Yeah, it says, as my great-great-great-grandfather, Cowlitz chief Skanewa said in session, we can hold hands to help us to let go. I'm going to repeat that. We can hold hands to help us to let go. Here, we can virtually hold hands. There is so much of which we can let go. That's so true.
I love it. So I think with these two cards coming up right around the time that you wrote that, actually is when I pulled out. And then even Ilka said, I've been focused on surrendering and allowing things to unfold. And it's perfect because I just pulled, I'm like, I looked at it and I thought, wow, the wisdom from our ancestors and the wisdom that comes from surrendering. So I'll hand it over to you, Chris, and then I will have you guide us into the 90 seconds of us maybe holding hands and then all of us just letting go. But I will leave that up to you.
Okay, well, so let me go back to these cards for a moment, because here we are talking about a couple of things. One is the energy of crossroads, where all of these different forces are coming together and intersecting. And then we're also talking about the energy of the new moon, which is about pausing and holding the darkness and the stillness, let's just say within us, so that we can gather ourselves to respond effectively, appropriately to what's going on outside of us. And so one of the things about this wisdom and surrender of these two cards that immediately comes to mind is that when we're in these chaotic times like we are right now, I mean, it's probably about as chaotic as most of us have seen in our living memory. And so what do we do with that? I mean, how do we hold that? How do we stay with it? And I think that we're sitting very close to the answers here. I mean, one is we're coming together and finding support. And then also what we're doing is we are holding a stillness and a silence and this sort of dark time of unknown where we can regroup internally. So Masami mentioned before this thing that I've commented on several times, it's become a very important piece of knowledge and wisdom for me, is this idea that in order for us to be able to learn, we have to experience this quality of disequilibrium or being turned upside down, have our ideas flipped on their head. And it feels very disorienting. So if you're feeling disoriented right now, know that that's a sign that your whole system is opening up for possible new learning and new patterns to come in. It's challenging what you thought you had. It's challenging what you thought you knew. And so one of the things that I would just say is, as we go into this, and we can go from here to just a moment of making that interconnection, is that when you feel like you are being challenged to the point that you just don't know up from down, where you're confused and you see people doing all of these different things that don't make sense, or people rushing to judgment about something or rushing to action over something before knowing all the facts, that is the time to practice what we're here to recognize today, which is to come to that still point inside. And you might even ask yourself the question, what wants to happen here? What wants to happen here? Not just what is my fear and uncertainty driving me to react and do so that I'm doing something, because it's really uncomfortable not to do something when things are in flux. So it's a very powerful practice to do nothing, to just do nothing and sit still with it and feel the discomfort of all of this unknown. So let's take a moment and practice that together. And simply all you need to do here is close your eyes, bring your energy inward. So for now, we're going to tune out or turn down the volume of what Masami's been describing as the horizontal axis, the social connections, the sounds around us, the politics, all of the concerns about what's going on out there in the world. And we're going to tune into that still, silent, inner core of our being. And just stay with that, whatever that means for you right now. We'll take just about another minute or so to just stay in that place. You may notice a feeling of wanting to squirm or get out of this stillness. Maybe the pull to just do something. And that's okay if that comes up for you. Just watch it. Notice that it's happening and let it go. You're still here. And this very simple practice can be combined with repeating the phrase, I am here. It's those three simple words, I am here, which brings you right back to this present moment that we're in. It affirms your existence here. And it allows you to acknowledge that you have a little space to pause and assess and see what's going on, maybe more than you first noticed, before you jump to any kind of action. And the odds are that if you can do those things, the action that you take will be the right action, not a reaction. So let's bring our consciousness and our energy of stillness back together here. And I hope you noticed a little shift by doing this very simple thing. So, Masami, do you want to keep talking about some of these themes?
Yeah, let's go into the next one. But I was curious, Chris, and maybe you can chat to everyone. What have you seen in terms of archetypes? You know, what are some of the archetypes that you are starting to see resurrect, I guess, in this past maybe couple of weeks? Because I feel like the old that is not willing to hand that power over or release or surrender are really starting to come up, or new archetypal energy is coming up also. Chris and I started watching this show on Apple TV, I think it was. It's called what is it? Gutsy? Gutsy, yeah. So for those of you that do get Apple TV, you might want to look into that. Gutsy, like guts. I think it's what it is. It was that
Right.
title. So I'm curious, you know, what are some of the archetypes of Chris, you are archetype, not queen. You're an archetype queen, sweetheart. But, you know, what are some of the archetypes that you've noticed kind of resurrect from the ground?
Well, let's go back to the one you mentioned before, because I wanted to mention a couple of things on that. The idea of the anti-hero, where it's essentially let's just call it the dark side or the shadow side of our persona being celebrated for the qualities that it has, where it's overturning the order. It's going against something that's established, but it's not the usual kinds of qualities that we generally push forward and value. You know, it's things like breaking things and disrupting things and, you know, putting an end to things. And so, and sometimes in violent or unpleasant ways. So there's a bit of that, this kind of bubbling up of this darker energy. And so you might have seen that in some respects, but another one that I think has come up a lot, and I think oftentimes this one that I'm going to mention can show up when we are in denial of the extent of change that's coming and that's already happening. And that is, it can be one of the magical kinds of archetypes. Okay, so sometimes it's referred to as a magical child, where it's sort of that innocence within us. It's not able to accept the harshness that's going on in the world, and is seeking an outlet and an explanation that is much more acceptable. And so it's easy to look into the world and see, okay, well, you know, maybe it's just this magic that's happening that is changing things for the better, and maybe that is true, but the magical thinking aspect of it can get in the way of actual what's going on in my life right now, and what are concrete steps that I need to take right now, because it's placing the action outside of your own ability to do something, and it's looking for a power outside of you to take care of things. So it can actually sort of leave us in a place of powerlessness, ironically, even as it's reaching towards something greater. So that's something that I've noticed in conversations and just listening to people talk about things. So I'll stop with that and let somebody else weigh in. Maybe Masami, you've got something you've noticed too.
Well, I'm seeing a lot of like much more female warriors coming out. You know, female warriors. They're vocal, but in the way, how do I describe it? I don't know. Are any of you feeling the female warriors coming out?
Let me just read Corey's comment, because
Yeah.
she says, is dark feminine energy. She says, is that one? Been feeling that from others.
Mm.
And I think that may be some of what you're talking
Yeah.
about too.
I'm having a hard time even defining what it is yet, because it seems like a newer archetype that is coming in. So we'll see how that shows up. I'm not sure if it's a dark feminine energy per se, but it's certainly a new face of the feminine warrior, I would
Corey
say.
just clarified that she's talking more about an ego-driven, attacking kind of thing, not positive energy. And I would say that gets at the scarcity mentality. Anytime you see that kind of thing coming up, it's because whoever is doing that believes that they have a position that they have to defend. And that's something that I think we will see more and more frequently as we are bombarded by horrible news from all corners of the world. And we're seeing things like an energy crisis unfolding, a recession coming. All of these things can make people move into that reptilian part of their brain. The self-protection kicks in. And it's like, I'm going to take care of me. And if you get in my way, watch out. And so you could see that there's a big uptick in that sort of thing.
Well, and I don't want to define the female warrior as a negative, because we cannot get down we don't want to go down the spiral of duality here. But I think, because I consider myself a female warrior as well. At times, is it ego driven? Absolutely, because I'm a human being. But I think I am testing out. Like I'm not quite sure. Is this what it is to be a female warrior? Is this what it is to speak my own truth? It's complicated because there's that horizontal noise that is social media says this, or if I say this, I'm gonna be judged like this. So I'm still having to navigate that crossroads, being the female warrior I consider myself to be. I may be only 5'2", everyone, but I do consider myself to be quite the warrior. But I do think I'm dancing with it. I'm not quite sure. So partially I'm surrendering to it, and partially I'm tapping into my own wisdom to explore a little bit more. But I think the word aggression is something that all of us want to keep in mind right at this new moon period too, but for the rest of the year and into the future. But aggression can fuel that ego-driven warriorship. And one way to come out of that, one way to keep that in check, is patience and slowing down will become the antidote. Was it antidote? Is that the right word? Okay, antidote to aggression. Yeah. So to keep you in check so you don't react from the aggressive point is to pause, stillness, quiet, and be patient, because I can get into this loop of aggression, and I get into this really ego-driven warrior when I'm driving, everyone. Okay, Chris will attest to this. But when I'm driving, and if somebody cuts me off, I am not happy, okay, or somebody's driving horribly, that like ego-driven female warrior comes out. And the other day Chris was laughing because I was on the driver's seat, so we only have one car by choice. And so the following week he was on the driver's seat, and he's like, geez, he's like, did you put your chair way up? And I said, sure did, because I'm short, but I'm going to appear big. And so I cranked my seat up so that I'm way up. So steering wheel's down here. So I'm like almost to the ceiling. He's like, I can't even get in this car. I'm hitting my head. So that is an example of aggression taking over the female warrior. Okay. Just giving it to you as an example. So next time you find yourself in that, you could go, oh yeah, don't be cranking that seat up so high. Okay. Calm down, Masami. All right.
Well, I
So
think,
I
yeah,
hope that helps define that. Yeah.
I was going to add to this that this goes back to what we were talking about earlier. And I think it's so important at this time because we're all on edge. So just remember that we're on edge right now. It's very easy to be reactive. And so if we want to have the world be a different place that's not, on a hair trigger all the time, and just be able to be more reasonable and more able to have a conversation with somebody, whether you agree with them or not. I mean, we've drifted far, far away from being able to do that over the last few years. But if that's something that you would like to see, guess what? It has to start inside. So if that's what I want, I have to work on that in myself first. And I know that that's a real challenge because it's easy for me to shut down and just say, you know what, I'm done. I don't want to have anything to do with anyone anymore. I'm just going to take a big step back, lock my door, and so long. I don't need to worry about it. That's my tendency, is to just withdraw and pack it up and just not care about what everyone else is doing. But that's not good for me either, because I still live in the world and I still have to interact with people. And unless I'm going to go live in a cave somewhere, which I have considered in the past, but probably that's not going to happen. So I have to figure out, how am I going to be with that? And so for me, it's about moving out of the withdrawal and leaning in and saying, okay, this is really uncomfortable, almost to the point where it's painful to engage with other people right now, because I really disagree with what they're saying and what they're doing and with their presentation of their ideas. And yet that's what I have to do. I have to weather that, and I have to let them say their piece. And if I disagree with them, I might just practice something very difficult, which is curiosity. And instead of judging them or fighting back, saying, well, how did you come to that view? What made you start to think that? And so, and then
that requires pausing, doesn't it?
It does, because my reaction is to pull away. Some people's reaction might be to, throw a punch or to start an argument. And so we have to watch what our tendency is. And in a way, we almost need to challenge ourselves by doing the opposite of that tendency. Does that make sense? I mean, it's like if I want to pull back, I need to move forward, but in a very thoughtful and open way. And likewise, if I want to throw a punch, I need to withhold that strike and say, okay, what's really trying to happen here? Like, why is this person coming at me like this? Or why are people behaving in these ways? And if we can start to understand ourselves, like, what is my fear that drives me? What are the things that make me shut down? If I can understand that about myself, I can start to see that in other people. And if I can start to see that in other people, I can actually start to have compassion for why they're doing what they're doing, even if I don't like it or agree with it. And as hard as it is, everyone, this is what circumstances are not just asking us to do, they're demanding that we do this now. So I'll step back now. I came forward a little bit. Now I'm going to step back and hand it back to Masami.
No, it's great. It's like a nice dance that is happening. And it's been so long, everyone, that we need to be doing this more often, because we were going to stop our conversation and not keep you, on this call too long. We said 45 minutes, but look, we're already almost 50 minutes into it, but we're going to get going on the number 2. So number 1, we went into all kinds of directions, but number 1, we're at the crossroads. Okay. Find your vertical axis, dial down the horizontal axis, which comes from external noise. And we went into different directions as well, but there's a lot of polarizations happening externally as well as internally. And the main polarizations that you feel inside you is driven by your axis versus the horizontal. Okay, so keep that in mind, balance those things out. It's not either or, but I'd like to see all of us connecting a little bit more with the vertical. So number 2 is the inner reflection, which kind of goes back to the RE words, right? That I talked a lot about on the Mercury Retrograde recording. And definitely go back and listen to that, because it wasn't recorded just for the Mercury Retrograde of this month, but it's overall. So anytime there's a Mercury Retrograde, go back and listen to it again. So use your, and I have a note that I'm going to read here, but use your perceptions of others to inform you about yourself. So use your own judgments. How are you seeing it? How's your vision of others? How are you labeling them? Based on that, you're going to learn a lot about yourself this year, but the rest of the year, because I told you this is kind of the peak point. So you're going to be learning about that from this inner deep reflection. And some of the questions, or maybe some of the things that you want to think about, is what you see in others, okay, or what you judge in others are a reflection of you. Okay, that's reflecting back at you. So just pause and notice, like, what did you think of somebody that you encountered at the Costco? Okay, you know Costco. I love Costco. So Costco always shows up in my conversations. It's my favorite store. So, you know, or maybe you made a judgment about somebody that came on the news and talked about particular political issues, and you made a judgment. Well, that's a reflection of you. So be a little bit, this is where the pauses become so important before that judgment becomes aggressive towards yourself too, or to others, right? And what we reject and resist also, these are also a reflection of you. What you reject and resist in others, that's a reflection of you. There's something that you resist and you're rejecting within you, something that you're not listening to. And what you admire though, and respect in others, that's also a reflection of you. That's also important. Just say, oh, I so admire that about that person. I so admire, you know, I admire Chris's groundedness. I admire his, you know, we've been together for a long time, and I have never once heard him speak ill of anyone. I mean, anyone. And I'd like to believe that that's a reflection of me too, because I admire that in him. But it's something I really need to learn to be better about. But I also know that that seed is in me too. Maybe I just haven't watered that seed much, you know, I haven't attended to that seed. So, but that's certainly something I admire about him. And other things are maybe what you love in others is what you love within yourself too. That's a reflection of you. So these are the things you might want to write down. And the last thing is what you're inspired by others. That is a reflection of you too. So it's what you see is the image that you create in the world, but it's the image that you create within yourself. It's kind of this idea like what you see is what you get, right? So try to see beauty. Try to see inspirations in others. Try to see love in them. Try to see, I don't know, what is it? What are we trying to see so that I want to see that in my life? Maybe their gentleness and their compassion is what I want to see, because that's what I want to see in the world. And that's what I want to receive. So what you see is what you get. Yeah.
I would also add to that we might see other people's aggression and their rudeness and their, you know, harshness or their violence as things that we want to judge or push back against. But a lot of times those are, you know, it's like what Masami said, when we're rejecting something or resisting it, there's something in us that we're also not wanting to touch because it hurts to acknowledge it in ourselves. So when we see those tendencies in other people, it's really important to say, if we can get there and just say, okay, well, if it were me and I was acting that way, I know it's probably because I was hurt or I was frightened. I was trying to defend myself from something I didn't understand. I was ignorant. And if we can start to recognize those patterns, again, first from within, we can really change how we see other people. And it changes what we can do in relation to them. And I admire a lot of things about Masami too, by the way. I mean, she is the most like determined, steadfast person that I've ever known, among so many other qualities. And I'm often a little more random and undisciplined. And so I like to think that maybe I admire those qualities because I'm also capable of them myself, even if I don't put them to work all the time.
Right. So I think these are great lists for all of you to just pause, come into the stillness of the new moon and write them down. What do you admire about others? What have you noticed? But what are some of the things that irritates the crap out of you, right? I probably could use a brand new notebook for that alone, but I'm going to work on the other side also. And, I wrote down, like, we must dare to be the answers we seek. We must dare to become and be the beauty we seek, okay? The peace we seek outside of us. We have to dare to become that, be that. And one more thing I wanted to say about this number 2, and the number 3 is going to be kind of short. So number 2 is that when you're making decisions about others or judgments or yourself, I want you to just pause. Particularly, it's such an awesome time, right? When it's dark out there, the moon is not illuminating back. That's a great time to go inward. This is the inward time, okay? This is when I want you to think about these decisions and judgments and choices you're making and explore that and ask yourself, where is this decision and judgments and maybe ideologies, where are they coming from? Are you making these decisions from your subconscious level? Are you making them from your soul level? Are you making that from your cultural backgrounds? Are you making that from your upbringing? Okay. This is where you've got to go into the introspection, right? And is this decision made, or, my quick judgments, did it come from my habits and my patterns, or did it come from my archetypes? Okay. Did it come from my certain archetypes that you have? Someday we will do an archetypal class, okay, where you can explore different archetypes. But is it coming from your magical child? Is it coming from the saboteur? Is it coming from the abandoned child? Is it come from your teacher side? Is it coming from your healer side? Depending on that, we judge and label constantly. Is it good or bad? We're not going down that road, because then it creates more duality. But it's good to know, isn't it? It's good to know. Oh, and then you start to think, I am feeding that wolf a lot more. Coming back to the Native American story, right? We're feeding that wolf so much more than this one. Because when I'm exhausted, my brain is exhausted, I could barely think straight. I'm feeding that part of the brain, but also feeding that wolf that is coming from subconscious mind. Totally subconscious mind. And I start to shift into 60% judgment from the subconscious mind till I put a stop on it and say, balance it out with my soul. Balance that decision based from the spirit. Okay. So really, it's a constant movement. It's a navigation. You're swimming with the waves. It's never like, waves are never going to be always the same. We all know that. Weather never stays 70 degrees and blue skies and fluffy clouds. Okay. No, we all have different storms that are happening inside us and different weather patterns. So explore that side, will you? Okay. I think that'll be really good for all of us. And Chris, can you make a quick comment on the nostalgia versus introspection?
Yeah, very quick. And this is really more planting a seed for a future conversation, because this is a big topic, is that it's very enticing to go to the place of getting wrapped up in emotional feeling and making decisions, or going into a place where you're focusing on the reward of your emotional response. So where you get the dopamine release and you feel something. It really could be anything. It could be good, bad. It could be excited. It could be down. But whatever that emotional thing is that's creating the hook, that's something that it's very easy to happen, for example, when we're thinking about our life. And rather than looking at our life in terms of introspection, which would be more like critical questions, meaning questions that help you to really dig into it. Like, how did I get into this situation? What could I have done differently? Are there different decisions I could have made that would have led to different outcomes? Instead of doing that kind of thing and learning from experience, the nostalgia part is very tempting. It's enticing to go there and just start saying, oh, I remember that time when I did this and it felt like this, and oh, that was nice. And I remember that time where, this person said that thing to me and it really pissed me off. And that stirs up that feeling, oh, I really hate that person, So that those are two very, very different ways of looking at your experience. And so again, seed planted. We'll come back and talk about this another time, because this is a very important topic about emotionality and how much that can sabotage the things that we actually really need and want in our lives. Okay, so I'll leave it there and we'll come back.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big topic, everyone. I think what we are noticing in ourselves as well, and we have to stop ourselves too, and in others, is that we are being nostalgic and calling it the introspection. Okay. It's different. So that requires us to go back to the, am I making these comments based on my subconscious or my patterns, my cultures, my habits? Or have I done enough introspections to change that and say I can make different decisions and connections from a soul level? That's the evolution of human beings. That's evolving. So, it's a big topic, but we wanted to caution all of us, including ourselves, not to go down the spiral of good old times, good old days, nostalgia, bad old times, whatever, but come out of it and say, why am I thinking about that? Why is that important for me to contemplate right now? And go a little deeper. That's when curiosity becomes your best ally. And dare yourself. I dare to investigate this because I only have this life, right? I don't know how many times I'm going to come back. I don't know how many times I've been here. None of that really, ultimately, in this moment, doesn't matter, okay? What matters is that you dare to research who you are, dare to dig deeper into who you are, dare to dive into the depth of you. And that requires making pauses as part of your lifestyles and saying to yourself, ooh, I just made that judgment based on my habits. I just made that judgment based on my cultural backgrounds. I just said something based on something I did not sort out in me because my subconsciousness have not been addressed. Okay. Those are the things I'm talking about. Okay. I know it's deep, and it's a big topic which we will need to revisit. So we've only covered number 2. Okay. Number 3 is very important. So number 1 is the crossroads. We're at the crossroads, right? Number 2, what did I name it as? Inner reflection, right? Number 2. Number 3 is that, where is my number 3? Okay. Experience the beauty that exists in you. Experience the beauty that exists in you, which been supported all throughout. Okay, all throughout. But that's number 3, that I really would like for you to do these exercises or contemplations or silence and meditation of these 3 topics. And experience the beauty that exists in you is not as hard as it sounds. It's actually just stop and, stop this unending pursuit of trying to be more than you, okay, or other than you, besides you. It's never ending, unending pursuit that's futile, right? Is that the word? Yes. And it's, I've said this too, but if I had pursued perfection with my English, I would never be on the screen right now, right? I just had to stop. It's like, who cares if I forgot the A's and the's and S's, okay? I mispronounced some things. It doesn't matter. So let's end that incredible pursuit that you're trying to be more than you. You are already absolutely beautiful. The sunset is in you. The stars are in you. The moon cycles are in you. All the galaxies are in you. All the rivers and the deserts and the mountains and the forests are in you. All the sentient beings, all animals, insects, everything you can think of are already equipped in you in this moment. So I would love for you to just feel the vastness and the depth of you. And let's do it in the Sufi way. You know, Sufis love heart-centered. So they love bringing their hands to the heart. And the Sufi, and I'll hand it over to Chris, but the Sufi's symbol is like this. Basically two wings right at the heart. So that's where we will find your inner beauty. So let's take a moment and let's dare to shine your own light outward, but first capture it in your hands. So then you can give that, you can share that to others. But I'm going to hand it over to Chris, and maybe he can just take us on a very quick, heart-centered, dare to shine your heart light and your internal beauty meditation.
All right.
Super spontaneous. Sorry, Chris. I was not even planning to ask you this.
The one thing that comes to mind is, one, you can just place your hands on your heart center and feel the energy, the bounding energy that's making your entire life possible. That's coming from this heart center. It's giving, it's receiving. It's, in a way, it's the filtering point, the crossroads inside of us between that horizontal and vertical axis that we've been talking about. So let's just do this for 3 breaths. And we're going to do this the reverse way from how you might naturally do it. I want you to, as you exhale, I want you to imagine that space expanding in your chest, in that heart center, expanding out to the world. And as you inhale, you're going to bring it back in. Okay. So exhaling, expanding that heart center. Inhaling, we're drawing it back in. And giving it back to the world. I hope that wasn't confusing. On the exhale, we're expanding inwardly. And on the inhale, we're actually sharing it back out to the world. So there's a physical reminder for you that you've got this light in you, that you've got this beauty in you, that's yours alone. It doesn't come from anyone else. It doesn't come from anywhere else. And it's yours to shine out on the world. And like Masami said, the ask is to dare yourself to shine your light on the world. And that takes us to number 4, Masami. So,
oh, no, I think number 3 is good. I said, I think I'm going to cover 3.
Number 4, 5, 6.
No, that's
no, we're out of time, but
we are, yes.
We have an endless
keeping people hostage at this point. Yes. But let's do, all of us come together and hold hands right now, like Richard recommended for us. And his elder has taught him too. We're all holding hands. And first, when Chris was saying that the reversing the breathing, my brain just went into a little bit of confusion at first. And then I realized that no, because I'm the universe inside. So when I'm inhaling, I am was it the inhaling, I'm expanding outward, right? And then exhaling. So I could see that the universe was blending from the inside and out. So let's blend our stars together, everyone. We're holding hands, we're sharing our stars, our universe with one another, all our unique expressions with one another. Not a single one of us is going to shine exactly the same way. We're not shaped the same way, but we make the universe as one. And we're sharing inner wisdom together. One hand is sharing to the other person's hand, so on and so forth. And we're receiving the person next to you's wisdom. And then slowly release your hands, surrendering to the bigger universe, vastness of the universe. And slowly bringing your hands to the namaste position. In the true sense of that word, namaste, is that I see your light and you see my light. I see the divine in you and you see the divine in me. We come together to bow towards that divine light. Namaste. Thank you, everyone. And I'm going to show you this again one more time. I want you to see that the she is surrendering to the stars in the dark sky. Do you see that there's no moon there? There's not a moon. So this is the new moon card I did not realize I pulled. Surrender to the new moon. And one more time. I love the fact that these are so blue. I have no idea exactly what that is telling me, but blue with this striking golden light coming out of her head, right? And the list that goes on of your own wisdom. So receive it, surrender to it. If you think of why it's so blue, do let me know, because I like to know. I would like to contemplate on that. Any other comments that we should read and we'll go?
I think for me, the one that Richard wrote about his volunteer basil sprouts was lost it on my screen. Let me see if I can find it.
Well, while you're finding it, I'll say, could listen, do this for hours. Oh, Penny, really? Yeah, but then, I almost need to go pee soon. So
there you go. Natural conclusion. But here's a little
blue discernment. Yeah.
Hope for the change of the seasons here. So Richard says, I'm seeing hope in some volunteer basil sprouts in a pot which is inside, near a south-facing window. With the fall, the sprouts are now finally getting some direct sunlight. They now have hope. And that's what we're doing, is we're turning toward our inner light. And that can allow us to have the hope to grow again. So maybe
You're welcome. You're welcome, everyone. And I know some of you need to go, but I got to read this Melissa's comment. That was a wonderful session, valuable teachings. Thank you, Masami and Chris. Blessings and greetings from another 5'2". Yes. And thank you, Masami, Chris, everyone. Wishing everyone a beautiful week. Yes. So enjoy the new moon energy. Come home. Come home. Okay, that's where you're going to find your inner wisdom. See you, everyone, soon. Bye. Much love.